So obviously I read Predictably Irrational, and I thoroughly enjoyed that book. But for people that don't know you, that aren't aware of your work, can you kind of give me a brief rundown of who you are, what you're involved in?
Yes. So my name is Dan Ariely. I'm a professor of psychology and behavioral economics at Duke University. I'm generally interested in social science as a tool to change behavior for the better. And there's lots of things that we can change for the better. And a lot of my work has been on how we misuse our money. Some of it is about how we don't deal with our health in the right ways. Some of it is about misinformation. A lot of it these days is about how we don't treat people well at work, of motivation in the workplace. And then I've become very interested in the question of the last chapter of people's lives. So for me, the last chapter of people's lives is from the time that people get a terminal illness diagnosis until the end of life. On average, it's more than 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Very, very few people die quickly, um, 6, 7%. Most of us will get a warning, and the warning will be very long. And that chapter, for most people, is not a good chapter, but it could be. It could be much better. It could be really a very good chapter. But what happens is that when people get a terminal illness diagnosis, they change their role from being a person to being a patient. And they change a lot of their priorities. They don't do the right things. And, every time I think about life, I think about where are we now and where we could be. And when there's a big gap, and I think it's within the realm of social science, that's a good topic for me. And end of life is one of those topics that I think there's a big gap between the way we spend the last chapter of our life and the way we could. And I think it's within the realm of social science to improve it. So I'm spending lots of time on that. And then from an introduction perspective, the other things to say, I don't know if people are listening to us or seeing us, is I have a half a beard. And the reason for this half a beard is that I was badly burned. So most of my body is covered with scars, including the side of my face. So hair just doesn't grow. I have lots of other things wrong with me because of this injury, but this injury also set me on this journey of, there are lots of things in the hospital I didn't like, and some of the tough things we have in life are like magnifying glasses. They allow you to look at things with higher granularity and pay more attention and so on. For me, my injury was one of those terrible, awful, very painful, and so on. But also got me to look at some things very carefully, including in the way that hospitals are run, the way patients are being treated, the way bandages are being removed from burn patients. And I started looking at lots of these questions from the perspective of, I don't want it to hurt that much. Is there a way to deliver the treatment but without so much pain? So I'm a social scientist, but for me, science is a tool for us to live better. I want to analyze the mistakes we do and analyze ways to make things better. That's kind of my corner.
Well, if you wanted to talk about a magnifying glass on someone's life, that final chapter seems to be a perfect point because not
Yeah.
only are they dealing with a terminal illness, but they know their time is limited. I would imagine that strips away a lot of the facade of how they view their life, what they think they're doing with it, how they look back on their past.
Yeah. So this profession called palliative care physicians. You've heard the term?
No.
So palliative care physicians are physicians that are not dealing with anything specific. The word palliative comes from like a gown. They kind of wrap you. And usually people use palliative care physician in the last 2 weeks, month or so on. But these physicians come into play when we're dealing with comfort and symptoms and so on, it's not about curing, it's about quality of life. Now, I talked to lots of those physicians, and I gave them this hypothetical scenario. I said, imagine somebody got a terminal illness diagnosis, and they come into your care at that moment. Now, that's not the usual case. Usually, they come into the care of palliative care physicians only when they go to hospice or very late, but they should start early. Somebody has a terminal illness diagnosis, they come into your care, and you, the palliative care physician, you have endless time. It's your only patient, and you deal with pain, and you deal with their social issues, and you deal with their goals in life, and you help them with everything. You're kind of there to wrap them around, and you're with them for 5 years. The average time slightly more than 5 years, and then they pass away. And 30 minutes after they pass away, you wake them up. I know it's not possible, but for the story. And then you tell them, you give them an option. You say, hey, you were just given the opportunity to experience one of your chapters of your life again. It could be elementary school, it could be high school, it could be college. Pick your chapter. And I asked them, how many of those people would pick the last chapter of life? And those palliative care physicians said that the vast majority will pick the last chapter of life. Now, sounds very strange. How can it be? So, first of all, in the story, it was very important that the last chapter of life was done the right way. It was done with help and support and so on. Now, nobody wants the last 2 weeks of life, but the last 5 years can be very good. And that's kind of what you were alluding in your observation before. Many of us have a midlife crisis. I don't know, Nick, did you have one or not yet? Or
I might have had some quarter life crises. I'm not quite at the
okay,
midlife level yet.
okay. So many of us have good midlife crisis, and some of us have really good midlife crisis. I think I had a very good one. And a midlife crisis is kind of an opportunity to look back at your life and say, okay, I got here. Is this where I want to be? Maybe not so much. Let me make some big changes. Now, you can't do it all the time. You can't wake up every day and say, oh, do I like it or not? No, so you just have to run for a while. But from time to time, it's really good to stop, maybe every decade, to stop and say, is this where I really want to be? And lots of people start having a midlife crisis. Very few people actually make the courageous choices that they would want to, because life. But when you get a terminal illness diagnosis, it's a midlife crisis on steroids, right? You can't not deal. I mean, and done correctly, you can deal with it even better. So, if all of life you say, oh, maybe I'll do it later. Oh, I'm having a midlife crisis. I'm not doing this. I want to change this, but maybe I'll do it later. When you get a terminal illness diagnosis, the maybe later goes away. And now people basically make changes. And if they get help, they make even more changes. And people revitalize relationship with people they haven't talked to for 20 years. And people stop doing things they dislike. And people try to crystallize for themselves what is important. How do I really want to spend my time? So, I think all of us would have preferred that people did not need, like, it's kind of a sad statement about humanity that we need a midlife crisis to change. It's a sad statement to say we need terminal illness diagnosis to do this, but when you go around life, you say, I'm really not enjoying this not right now, but it will be worth it for the long term. It's really not this, but I don't have the energy to change right now. There's something very important about saying you don't have later. What do you really want to do? And for many people, it can be done correctly with the right level of help. It can be very, very good. Anyway, so that's the optimistic side of this, right? I think that there's lots of things to fix, but eventually I think it's a chapter that could be. Um, there is sadness. I'm not saying that anybody would go to the end of their life laughing. It's sad for everybody, but even with the sadness, it could be a really good chapter.
It is kind of unfortunate that we need that catalyst for change to really implement the changes
Yeah,
that we want in our life. And being faced
yeah,
with a terminal illness, it kind of puts a finality on our time and makes us realize, oh, I can't push this off to tomorrow. I can't stop drinking because I'm going to die in 5 years or a couple of years or who
yep,
knows how many months. So I should do it
yep.
today. I'm not going to push it off
That's
another
right.
day.
That's right. Now, of course, we can do some of those things, right? We can all simulate this and say, okay, if I got a terminal illness diagnosis now and I was given 5 years, what kind of things would I stop doing? And then you say, okay, do I want to stop doing them without that looming deadline? Maybe yes, maybe no. Um, but recalculating the course of our lives every 10 years or so, I think is a very, very important thing to do.
It's challenging for us to implement those changes though, which is fascinating because we are so adaptable as a species. We can turn things around on a dime, but getting to that point where we actually implement the changes we want is so incredibly hard.
So partly that we're adaptable is that we get used to things. As somebody with a serious injury, I can also see the benefit of that. Right? There's pain that is kind of in the background. I don't think about it. And my hands don't work very well. I figure out ways around that. We figure out, we adapt. We figure out ways to deal with things. And change is very tough for us. Change is very, very tough for us. Tomorrow doing exactly what we did today and yesterday is what is called the path of least resistance. Making a change is very tough for all kinds of reasons. Sometimes, like, even if you say, okay, I'm driving every day to work, I want to start riding my bicycle. How much traffic is there? How dangerous is it? What happens if you have a flat tire? There's lots of little things we don't know. When do you need to wake up and leave home to do that? What will you do if you get sweaty? Is there a shower? There's so much uncertainty. There's so much we don't know. Changes end up being something like, if you think about our system, think about driving. When we started driving, we couldn't drive and change the stations on the radio at the same time. Like we had to focus on this, and we had no capacity to deal with something else. Now we drive, and I ask you, what lights on the way from work to home were red and green? You say, I have no idea. We just did it in an automated way. Our mind, our environment wants us to automate things, wants us to do things without thinking, without deviations. So it ends up being that that's what we do.
I've been I sit on this idea often, the idea of implementing change in your life. And people far smarter than me have phrased this far better, but there's almost a threshold for change where if your life is bad, but it's not miserable enough, there's no reason to implement the change. You just fall into that path and stay on autopilot. But if it was a little bit worse, you would change something and it could potentially be better.
That's right. That's right. So what is the trigger to change something? So the process of change by itself is difficult. And we usually don't think long term. We think short term. So imagine you're down a path, the path is not so good. We'll take the regular kind of scenario of marriage. You're in a so-so marriage. It's not terrible, but it's certainly not great. Let's say on a scale from 0 to 10, it's a 5. Okay, not terrible, not great, it's a 5. And, I ask you, if you were not in this marriage, would you enter it? And you say, of course not. And I say, but if you are in this marriage, what it would look like if you left? And you say, well, it will be 2 years of a three, right? The immediate pain, I hurt a person I care about, kids, they have a property, whatever. It'll be maybe 6 months, 2 years of a decrease. Later on, it might get better. But do I really want to take the short term pain for the possibility of a long term gain? And we're not good at that. Right? So you say, you know what? Another trick, by the way, is to say, what would you advise a friend to do? Right? When we advise other people, say, okay, take the 2 years, think long term. But for me, do I really want to do it today? I don't really want to deal with this too much. Maybe let me delay it a little bit. So it's a combination of getting used to things plus a lot of changes. The improvement is not immediate, right? If the improvement was tomorrow, like if you say, okay, I'm in a relationship that is 5, and if I stopped it, tomorrow will be a 7, we would take it. But the problem is that in most cases, tomorrow will be a 3, and it will take a while. So it's a long-term gain for a short-term loss, and we don't do it that much.
In terms of relationships, I always phrase it, would you want your child to be in the relationship that you're in?
Yeah. Yeah. So advice, by the way, is a good strategy. So when we think about what we want to do, we are dramatically influenced by our emotions and short-term thinking. And emotions are basically about short-term, not exactly thinking, but they're about short-term. When we give advice, we are more remote. We're kind of looking at things from the outside. And therefore, the emotions are not as salient. I'll give an example from an experiment we did. We describe a scenario to people in which they have an illness, they went to a doctor, the doctor suggested something, and we asked them, would you ask the doctor to give you the medical record so that you can go and get a second opinion? And most people said no. And then we said to another group, if this was a friend of yours, would you advise them to ask the doctor for their medical record so they can go for a second opinion? I said, absolutely yes. When you stand there in front of a doctor, saying to them, you know what, I don't trust you so much, can I have my medical record for a second opinion, is very tough to do. But when you advise, you say, don't worry about it. It's so important to do that. So a really good trick to improve our decision making is to ask yourself what we would advise to somebody just like us in this situation, and then turn around and take that advice.
You mentioned there that you had a good midlife crisis. Can you expand on that a little bit? I haven't heard it phrased like that before. Normally people refer to their midlife crises and it's not great.
And so it has multiple dimensions, but some of them are very specific to me, and some of them are not. So first of all, let me describe what I mean. So I got very badly injured. I was in hospital for almost 3 years, and the first 2 years I didn't really think about the future. When you have a lot of pain, there's no future. There's just getting over the pain now. It's not like, what will I do? No, I just don't want pain now. That my whole day was filled with, when are they removing my bandages? When is this treatment? When is that treatment? It wasn't, what would happen. The last year, the treatment subsided. I started thinking about the future. And that was the first time that I asked myself, was it a good outcome that I am still alive? When I got injured, I could have died, and I believe that dying is neutral, right? You're not suffering and you're not enjoying it; it's just neutral. I could have died. Instead, I had unbelievable pain for a long time. This was many years ago. I still have pain. I don't have pain close to the level I used to, but I still have daily pain. I still have surgery from time to time. Extensive burns are complex. um, and 2 years into it, I started asking myself the question of, was this worth it? Um, I couldn't go back to day one, but I said, but I started to think about, what do I think about this life with so much pain? Um, and very much like your strategy, I also used the kids idea, and I said, if I had kids that were burned like I did, and I know everything I know now about burns, would I? And I had the choice: would I try to keep them alive or not? And up to about age 50, my answer was that it would have been better to die. So I got injured when I was about 18, but up to age 50, you know, dramatic improvement and so on. At age 50, I'm a professor. I publish a few books. Lots of things are going well, but if you ask me, was the initial tragedy of the first few years plus the ongoing pain worth the positive side of life? I would have said not so much. I would say no. Um, the thing that the change for me at age 50 um, was that I started looking at life much more as a game. And I'll say one more thing about injury. So I always, okay, pain is terrible. Pain is terrible. And what I always try to do with my pain was to divide it into three components. I felt that I was dividing it into three components. So let's say they're removing my bandages. I have the part that is experiencing the pain. That's a terrible part, but that's one part. The second part that I tried to create was that I tried to create a part that was not experiencing the pain, but observing the pain. Oh, here's a pain. Is it sharp? Or is it stinging? Is it oscillating? Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? Where's it really coming from? Is it coming from deep in my hand or superficially? I would try to kind of like a pain connoisseur think about the pain, and then I had the third kind of role where I would try to control the pain. Can we slow down a little bit? Can we accelerate? Can we do this part first, that part first? And it felt, this is not research, this is just subjective feeling. It felt to me that being the experiencing of pain, if it was 100%, I could take a part to the observer, and I could take a part to the control, and I reduced the intensity of the experiencing of the pain. And at about age 50, I started adopting this approach to life more generally. I said, you know, I'll give you an example. During COVID, there were groups of people who thought that I helped bring about COVID. I got death threats. It was very quickly. I said, isn't this interesting? you know, Somebody is suspecting me that I've done, and not only that, like some people thought I had a contract with Pfizer, and I said, I can show you my taxes. I have no scope. um, but yes, of course, there's a part where you get death threats, and it's painful, and it's stressing, and so on. At some point, my university had to contact the authorities. But there was a part of me that says, isn't this interesting? What I'm here, I'm learning something that is kind of the story of our current story of what's happening in our society. People make up stuff. People fully believe that. There doesn't seem to be an end to the extent that they will go. Where's civility? Where's curiosity? Where's logic? So yes, I experience, but I also try to say, isn't this interesting? What am I learning about this? Or how am I feeling? So, okay, so I just got a death threat. What is happening to me? What is happening to me? What am I feeling? What's happening to my dreams? What's happening to me during the day? So I started I shifted my perspective in that regard. That's one big thing that happened to me. And the second thing, more things happened, but the second thing that happened was to say, um, it's time to live life in the way I want to live life, um, and to basically say, you know what, I'm kind of a strange person with a strange history, and it's okay. And I need to just the half a beard was part of it. Other things were too, but basically, kind of self acceptance, my oddities, my the strange things I do, and basically say, you know what, um, I have my very unique little niche of things that interest me that I'm good at, and I'm going to do more of it and enjoy it. Hmm. So I've done all kinds of things. For example, I do internships now. Um, I go to companies that I like, or to people I like. Say, hey, can I do an internship with you? Can I spend a few days with you? I did the course to become an end of life doula. To help people down this path. So I'm basically saying, um, like I trust that my instincts about how I should direct my life are correct. What society tells me is not for me; it's for society. And I got this courage to be who I am now. It's annoying for some people, but it's wonderful for me.
Well, you wanna talk about implementing change over a long span. It sounds like you had a 32-year arc of development, and I'm sure there were good days on top of the bad days, but that is a prime example of change doesn't just happen tomorrow, and especially if you have a severe circumstance like you had where you were injured, that change can take
Yeah,
a long time.
change can take a long time, and okay. So let's say something about change. My theory for a good life is that there are some people who are lucky, but luck is something you create. It's not about being born lucky, it's about creating luck. So, how do you create luck? So, let's start with an analogy. Think about two basketball players. One waits until they're 100% sure that they'll hit the basket, and they try twice a game and they make 100%, 2 points, two baskets. The second person tries every time they think it's 50% chance. They try 40 times and they make 20 baskets. Which one adds more to the team? But but life, the 20 baskets, right? But life is not basketball because basketball is binary, in or out. Whereas life, most things take a really long time, and it's about when do you want to keep on investing and when do you want to stop. So life is a little bit more like gardening. You have one gardener who says, I'm only going to plant a tree if I'm 100% sure it will grow and so on. And the other person, you know what? If it's 50% chance, I'll plant it. But again, it's not binary. It's not as if you go a month later and say, okay, I have it. No, no. But one gardener just keeps on working. The other gardener gets to see which trees seems to be growing, which ones not. And the real issue with luck is try more often, see what works and invest more in it. And very important, see what doesn't work and stopping investing in it. Now, that experience of admitting failure and stopping things, very hard to do, but really important. The idea of trying more things and knowing that you'll have more failure is very tough, but very important. So when I kind of figure out what do I want to do in life. I said, you know what? And I want to try more things. I want to try more things. I want to enjoy the trying. Yes, it's good when things happen, but I want to try things. So um, I tried to write a novel. I went to Mexico. I sat in coffee shops. No, turns out probably not the thing I should be doing. I tried to write kids' books. Yes. Um, uh, my first kid book was just published in a few countries, and I'm writing now the third. I finished the second; it's not out yet, but I'm writing on the third. Turns out, writing novels is maybe not for me. Kids book, I love it. I really love it. I don't know if you know. I tried to write a TV show for NBC. Uh, it's a show loosely based on my life. It's about a university professor that um, does research, my research. His office looks like my office, and helps the FBI solves crime. Just finished the second season. What an adventure! Um, and I went to the studio to see the filming. I have a cameo in each of the seasons. I learned from I basically try to embrace that experience extensively as possible. Um, so I very much like, let's try. Let's not worry about failure. Let's try things that I'm dreaming about and see where they end up going. And it's been just fantastic.
That not worry about failure part is the key, and that seems to be the
Yeah,
part that most people get hung up on.
yeah. So I'm trying now to organize my thoughts a little bit about this. But I'll tell you kind of. We've all heard the term loss aversion, right? And loss aversion is kind of one of the basic principles in behavior economics. We hate losses more than we enjoy gains. If today you lost $100,000 versus gaining $100,000, gaining $100,000 is wonderful, but losing $100,000 is really, really miserable. Like there's a symmetry in that. And why do we have this asymmetry? So imagine you're an animal in the jungle and you go hunting. You're a human being, but you're a hunter. And let's say good things happen. A good thing happened. You hunted the rabbits. How good is that? It's quite good. Maybe it gives you another 2 or 3 days of life, right? So it's good. Let's say somebody bad happens. A lion hunts you. How bad is that?
Pretty bad.
Really bad. The symmetry between the good things that can happen to us and the bad things that happen to us, it's not symmetrical. Bad thing can happen. Game over. You got injured. You died. Good things can never buy you infinite life. It's always slightly good and very bad. So we evolutionary developed a strategy in which we pay real attention to the bad things that can happen because that's dangerous. But that's not true about life anymore. We don't have tigers and rabbits. Right now, we have books and TV shows and startups and investing in the stock market and cryptocurrency and buying a new apartment. And of course, we can lose, but this problem with symmetry has changed very different. It's very different. So we have this old strategy of loss aversion that we carry with us, but now it's not the right strategy. If evolution would have happened now, if whatever we have now would happen for millions of years, and our evolutionary tools would have developed now, they wouldn't favor loss aversion. So on those cases where our evolutionary tools are bad tools for the current environment, we need to do things to actively override our instincts. And we need to say, you know what? I know that failing feels terrible, but I can't have that stop me. So I'm going to fight that. And I'm going to create a rule, and I'm going to insist, and I'm going to do all kinds of other things and not doing it. By the way, social media, I mean, we can talk about that as well, is making things worse. But in general, I think we have most people, I think, live a life that is too timid compared to what they would have wanted. I'll give you one other story about this. Um, there's a story about Samuelson, the famous economist, and Samuelson's. I'll change the numbers, but Samuelson goes at the corridors and he meets one of his friends, and he says, "I want to offer you a bet. I'll toss a coin. If it's heads, you will make $1,200. If it's tails, you will pay me $1,000. 1,200 plus, 1,000 minus. Do you want to play that game?" And his friend says, no, I don't want to play it. And I understand it's a positive expected value, but if I'll win $1,200, I'll only be so happy. But if I lose $1,000, it will really bother me and for days. So I don't want to do it. And then Samuelson says, and what if we play this game 1,000 times? So of course I want to play, right? 1,000 times, of course. I don't know exactly how much I'll win, but it's a really amazing game if you play it 1,000 times. And Samuelson was saying, here's what you're telling me. You're telling me that if I came to you every day, and every day I asked you about one gamble, every day you would say, yes, I know that it's a positive expected value, but I don't want to lose, so I will not take it. But if you looked at the end of these 1,000 days, let's say 3 years, you say, what kind of life have I led? Why did I give up all of those opportunities? Now, of course, life doesn't give us the same bet every day, like in the Samuelson example, but life gives us different bets every day. And the point is that if every day we think just about the focal bets that we have, should I do this, take this risk, maybe lose this failure, we will every time be very afraid to lose, and we would not take these opportunities. But if we think about our life as a portfolio, we would say, of course, I want to take this risk. Right? If I say, you have 50 more years to live, what kind of risks do you want to take? Do you want to take? No. I certainly want to take risks. So the Samuelson's point is to basically say that when we think about one decision at a time, we focus too much on the losses. But portfolio thinking helps us. That's what VCs do, right? They say, "Oh, I'll invest," or that's what we do in the stock market. They say, "I'll buy an ETF. I'm not going to focus on each of the specific things. I will think about my portfolio risk taking approach rather than individual." So those are ways to at least get ourselves to think more systematically about the kind of risks that we want to lead. I'm not telling everybody take a lot of risk, but I want you to take the kind of risk that you would like to take.
On top of strictly risk aversion, do you think some of that fear is that if we take a chance on, say, a dream and it doesn't work out, that door is now closed? You touch on this idea a lot in Predictably Irrational, and you actually have a quote in there
Yeah.
that has stuck with me and probably will for a long time. You say that we have an irrational compulsion to keep doors open. And I felt like that really resonated with me, where we almost don't want to try because then we'll have the answer. Oh, if I always wanted to act or be a teacher or follow my passions and it doesn't work out, then I can't say, oh, I want to try to do this thing because I know I
Yes, sir.
tried and it didn't work out. That door is now shut.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not the only thing. Yes, you're absolutely right. There are some doors that we want to keep open. There's some things we don't want to.
Even if it's
We
just
don't
to
want to
hold on to
learn.
the idea of it, that,
That's
oh,
right.
maybe
That's
someday I
right.
could do this.
That's right. Especially things that are connected to our identity, and so on. Um, and also, I have to say, I met this high school principal not too long ago, and he said, my kids in his school, he said they never take any responsibility, and I want to teach them to take responsibility. I said, look, it's a really nice idea, and I'm all in favor, and I'll try to help you. But I said, let's also remember their consequences for taking responsibility. He was kind of close to my age. I said, when you and I were kids, uh, if we did something bad in school and we took responsibility, we knew, the teacher knew, our parents would know, and maybe two or three other kids would know. No, there's some chance that the rest of the world will find as well. So we also need to understand that the amplification of negative information is very, very high. By the way, why do we love gossip so much? Why do we love gossip? I'll tell you why. It actually makes sense. Imagine we lived in a small community, 200 people. And imagine that you thought about doing something negative to me, but you knew that I would tell everybody. It's just like an amplifier of the negative things you do, right? If you did something negative to me and I could hurt you back, that's one thing. But if I told everybody, it's like I'm supersizing the punishment. Everybody would know, nobody would talk to you, and so on. So in a society where people gossip, it's like a super bomb against bad behavior. Everybody would say, I will hurt you. You will not only hurt me, the size of the punishment will be so big because nobody else would talk to me. Now, you can see how, if we lived as a small community, gossip can actually get people to act in a good way. Right? In our evolutionary history, there was no police, there was no judicial system, and the fear of gossip kept people behaving well. Right? Now, for gossip to work, it means that everybody needs to be attuned to negative information about group members. Right? It's not symmetrical. We want to pay attention to negative things because we want to know, and that creates the fear and the deterrence. Now, right now, we don't live in small communities of 200 people. And the people we gossip about, it's not about fixing their behavior, and it's not about incentivizing good behavior. Right? In the old way, if I gossiped about you, you would learn that it's not good to act badly to me and you would fix your ways. We're not a closed system anymore. Now we gossip about people we don't know, and we tarnish their reputation. They don't have an opportunity to fix anything. I mean, the whole mechanism of small community providing feedback for people to fix their undesired behavior has gone away. And now we have social media who is using those things that trigger us. Oh, they love gossip. Let's give them more gossip. They love negative news. Let's give them more negative news. Let's allow them to express hate and anger and so on. But now they don't function as useful mechanisms anymore. So, kind of, if I had to think about, what's the end goal for social science for me? So, I think that the human mind is like a vintage Swiss Army knife. And we mentioned these things. I'll just organize the thought. Vintage Swiss Army knife. So let's start with the Swiss Army knife. The idea for the Swiss Army knife is the Swiss Army knife is not particularly good at anything. It's kind of okay in lots of things, and it's compact, and we can carry it with us. Our mind is kind of like that. Not particularly good at anything, quite good in lots of things, compact, and we can carry it with us. So we have tools to deal with anger and hunger and sexual desire and you name it. Not particularly good, but we can carry it with us. But our Swiss Army knife, as we said, is vintage. It was developed in a period that is very, very different from our period. We don't have tools for compound interests. We don't have tools for living 30 years past retirement. We don't have tools to help us figure out which school to send our kids to and cryptocurrency and so on. So we still carry this vintage Swiss Army knife because that's what we have, but it was never that good, and now it's not good and many of the tools are irrelevant. But that's what we have to deal with. Now, that's what's in us. What is the environment doing? So let's think about cars and IT as two examples. The way cars get better every year is by analyzing how lousy drivers we are and trying to fix that. The cars are getting better by making it less likely that we would kill ourselves and other people. Oh, they drive too fast. Let's give them seatbelts. Oh, they don't look at the road enough. Let's make anti-lock brakes. Oh, they don't look behind. Let's do rear view mirror. They don't look at the side. Let's do a side mirror. And let's add some beeps or some flashes to it because they don't pay attention. And you name it. Technology moves on. And the technology moves on by observing our weak points, observing the things we don't do well, and try to fix it. So that we and the car are doing better than we did with an old car. Right? The new car is helping fix our human deficits. Information technology is the other way around. Information technology also gets better every year. But how do they get better? They also analyze our weak points, but they take more advantage of that. Right? It's not as if, these people seem to like gossip. This gossip thing is not so good for them and for the world. So let's make a system that gets them less likely to spread gossip. Oh, these people seem to like misinformation more than real information, or superficial information more than complex information. Let's fix that. No. Oh, let's do more of that. So I think there are two important things for me from social science, kind of in a big picture way. One is to recognize the vintage Swiss Army knife. We're not perfect. We have lots of deficits. We have lots of predictable kind of challenges in how we process and make decisions about the world. And now the question is whether we are going to build systems that take advantage of it, or systems that try to make us better off. Right? Are we patching those weak points, or are we digging into them? And of course, I hope that we will pick the patching. I hope that we, together with our future payment mechanisms, will make more better decisions with our money than the other one, right? And I wish that it wouldn't be that our payment mechanisms will be designed to even more to take advantage of us. Right? So that's kind of for me, kind of the vision. The vision is, let's understand our weaknesses and figure out a way to overcome the weak spots.
And if you wanted to imagine a tool that takes advantage of our weak spots, it seems like social media is that prime example. Because you're right, it's not
social
just
media.
The amplification, it's also the archival aspect, where now it's out there, and if it's a video especially, it's out there for life.
Social media is doing it in a big way. And it creates people to be fearful. I mean, for a while we talked about the fear of missing out, which was, one way to say, okay, if you're fear of missing out, you'll keep on looking and so on. But there's a lot of, am I accepted? Where's my social reputation? Fear is driving people. Worry, lots of people go to social media from places of fear and concern rather than places of joy and happiness. Right? It's a little bit like it's a bit more like you see people in looking kind of sitting in front of slot machines,
almost
rather
like
than
escapism.
people who are yeah. And we have smaller and smaller chunks, so it's the go-to approach, even if you're in the elevator for 30 seconds and so on. Thinking ends up being something tough. The brain doesn't want to spend too much time thinking. So we have lots of mechanisms to try and get us to be passive and not to think. It's really good for us to think. But we mechanisms that help us not think and sort of just pass the time are very appealing in the morning, in the moment. Is it good for us? No. But do we choose these things way too often? The answer is absolutely yes.
I would imagine that you have a very nuanced perspective on social media given with what you endured during COVID. You had a very unique COVID experience, I think, just to put it
Yeah.
lightly. Can you kinda lay out what happened to you?
Yeah. So when COVID started, there was lots of need to get advice from social scientists. The problem was, of course, biology, but it interacts with humanity. Um, there was a dramatic increase in domestic violence, about 900%. There were questions about how do you teach kids remotely? How do you work remotely? What do you do with laying people off? How do you get people to have a new habit? A ton of questions. Do you give people funds? Not wearing masks and so on. And I basically stopped doing everything and just started doing that. I basically answered as many questions as I could to every government that wanted it. We tried to do some research very quickly to understand some things. And then about 6 months into it, I discover that there's a group of people that thinks I'm the devil. I'll give you just one example. There was this video that showed me in the burn department. So I was burned 70% of my body, true. 3 years in hospital, true. But then they said that because of that, I started hating healthy people. And that's why I joined the cabal, the Illuminati, to try and kill as many people as possible. At that time, there was no vaccine, but they predicted that it will also be with the vaccine. And I spent about a month trying to convince people that I wasn't this evil person, that I was just waking up in the morning and trying to improve people's lives. But then I failed miserably. And then I just stood back and started talking to people. And I basically said, I'm not arguing with you. I'm not trying to correct you. Help me understand your perspective. Um, what did you believe 10 years ago? And when did things change for you? And take me on your journey. Um, and the book I wrote on this misbelief, I gave it to ChatGPT. And I said, please summarize it in one word. And the word it gave me was empathy. And I was very happy with that word because, I talked to people who hated me. I talked to one guy who said that he wants to be my executioner. He predicted that I would get public hanging for my crimes against humanity. And he wanted to be the one who, but I talked to him about his childhood and his understanding and his journey and so on. And, at the end of the day, I mean, I learned lots of things about how people change their minds and go down what's called the funnel of misbelief and get deeper and deeper into it. But these were kind, wonderful people that got this terrible lot in life to go down the funnel of misbelief. And if you believe that there's a cabal with unbelievable force working behind the scene to get you and your kids to be infertile and maybe kill you with the vaccine, that's a terrible way to live. At the end of the day, I think that we develop this machinery of information that takes people who are stressed and really gets them to believe things that are really not good for them and really not good for society and create tremendous long-term harm. So I ended up really feeling for them, right? And also having some particular thing that I think we should fix, right? So I didn't come out accusing these people. I came out with the thought that we have betrayed them as a society. We we give people information system that make it very hard for somebody who is stressed and maybe lost their job, doesn't understand why they lost their job and not other people, make it very likely for them to start questioning their assumptions, seeing some videos, finding like-minded people, and eventually living a very, very unhealthy, unsatisfying life. Um, and my motivation to trying to figure out how do we fix that has also increased a lot.
Do you feel like you were more or less equipped to be in that situation given your background? Because I could see it almost working against you where you do have this social knowledge and yet you're getting the blunt of all of this.
No, I think it was I was in the right place. No, I'm kind of the right person to study this. Um, it I don't know if you've talked to people on your podcast who climb mountains, but mountain climbers you should are unbelievable people. They risk their lives in a degree that almost nobody else does. They get they lose fingers. I mean, they get injured. I mean, it's an unbelievable thing. Um, I think the misbelievers, my COVID experience was kind of like Everest for me. I certainly got injured mentally, right? Death threats and so on. Um, but for me, it's kind of an important achievement. I think I gained some insights. The mountain climbers get some insights about their ability and the world, and I gained some, I think, some really important insights for a social scientist. I think I now understand this problem in such a deeper way of what is going on. My priority, figuring out how important it is to figure out, has increased so much. So I think it's kind of like those things are kind of my Everest. They are painful. This I can't say that I'm happy they happened, right? But given that they happened, I took them on a path that got me to learn as much as possible and improve as much as possible, change the direction of what I think is important, maybe have an impact.
Has a lot of that subsided now that we're on the back end? Have you been able to pull, you talk about it a little bit in your book as you're building relationships with these individuals. Have a lot of them kind of come out from that idea that you were part of this big cabal?
Very few have changed. The extreme people who've spent so much time on this have not backed down. This is still very much central to them. And of course, in their echo chamber, it's still very much alive. But most people say, "Oh, isn't this old?" No, no, no. For some people, it's still ongoing.
I had an individual on the podcast back in the early days of me doing the podcast and the early days of COVID, and she had kind of slipped down a few rabbit holes, and she was a believer that not only was the vaccine, it had a microchip, I believe she said, in it, and that 5G was the predominant spreader of all of this. And it was just fascinating watching her break down her line of thinking as to how she got here and how she believed she was in the in group and she had discovered something that people didn't realize. And she was trying to dispense this information to others to almost wake them up so that they could see the truth, that they wouldn't be kind of these sheep being led to slaughter.
Yeah,
And to watch that
yeah,
play out
very,
personally
very
was
common.
fascinating.
Yeah, this idea of turning the fortunes and saying you're the one who doesn't understand, I'm the one that has the information, is a very important thing for feeling in control, right? And
Is that what it is?
you
Is
know
control and feeling like you're the hero in some sense?
it's the starting point. So if you ask the question of what is the trigger that somebody wakes up and say, I want to start believing something different. It doesn't happen if you're happy with life. If you're resilient and happy, it doesn't happen. But if you feel that you don't understand the world, I don't mean the stress that says, oh, gee, I have lots of emails to answer. If you say, I don't understand the world, what's happening here? Why am I losing my job and they don't? Why is this happening? The world promised me that I'll do better. Why am I not? Why is my salary not going up? My parents told me I'll have a better life than them. Why is it not happening? Those things basically get people to either feel that they've done something wrong, but not something we want to do, or to say there's a reason, there's a villain, and the villain is working behind the scenes, and short term, gives you a sense of satisfaction. Oh, it's not my fault, and now I understand what's happening. And not only that, but you think that I lost my job. No. I'm the one who really knows what's going on. You are the sheep.
I know we have to wrap here, but I just want to ask, why did you choose the terms misbelief and misbeliever? Because they felt intentional in reading your book.
Yeah. So first of all, I think that conspiracy is kind of a conspiracy theorist or something is a derogatory term, and I think we shouldn't. There's nothing to be derogatory about these individuals. But the other thing is that it's not about a theory. So for me, a misbeliever has two things. It's about believing something that ain't so, because then maybe that's the theory, but it's about having a lens that creates from which we view everything in life. So people who believe that the earth is flat don't just believe the earth is flat. They also believe that every pilot knows the truth and they're not saying it. They believe that NASA is lying to them. The US government is lying to them. There are no satellites. I mean, it's a lens from which you view other things. And if they're lying on all of those things, what else are they lying on? So I think it's a derogatory term, and I don't think he explains enough the psychology. But for me, the psychology is about adopting a framework that gets us to suspect everything and worry about everything.
Okay, well, Dan, thanks for doing this. I really enjoyed chatting with you.
My pleasure. Very, very nice to meet you. And thanks for inviting me.
Do you want to plug where people can find your work, your books, your TV show?
So my website is the best place, www.danariely.com, probably the easiest one. I also have a website called the Center for Advanced Bureaucracy, where I complain about bureaucracy. But danariely.com has most of the information.